Three young men are walking together to a wedding when one of them is detained by a mariner. The young man is transfixed by the ancient mariner's glittering eye and can do nothing but sit on a stone and listen to his strange tale. The mariner says that he sailed on a ship out of his native harbor, below the kirk, below the hill, below the lighthouse top, and into a sunny and cheerful sea. The mariner recalls that the voyage quickly darkened as a giant storm rose up in the sea and chased the ship southward. Quickly, the ship came to a frigid land of mist and snow, where ice, mast high, came floating by, and the ship was hemmed inside a maze of ice. But then the sailors encountered an albatross, a giant seabird. As it flew around the ship, the ice cracked and split, and a wind from the south propelled the ship out of the frigid regions into a foggy stretch of water. The albatross followed behind it, a symbol of good luck to the sailors. The mariner confesses that he shot and killed the albatross with his crossbow. At first, the other sailors were furious with the mariner for having killed the bird that made the breezes blow. But when the fog lifted soon afterward, the sailors decided that the bird had actually brought not the breezes, but the fog. They now congratulated the mariner on his deed. The wind pushed the ship into a silent sea, where the sailors were quickly stranded. The winds died down, and the ship was as idle as a painted ship upon a painted ocean. The ocean thickened, and the men had no water to drink. As if the sea were rotting, slimy creatures crawled out of it and walked across the surface. At night, the water burned green, blue, and white with death fire. Some of the sailors dreamed that a spirit, 9 fathoms deep, followed them beneath the ship from the land of mist and snow. The sailors blamed the mariner for their plight and hung the corpse of the albatross around his neck like a cross. A weary time passed. The sailors became so parched, their mouths so dry, that they were unable to speak. But one day, gazing westward, the mariner saw a tiny speck on the horizon. It turned out to be a ship, moving toward them. Too dry-mouthed to speak and inform the other sailors, the mariner bit down on his arm, sucking the blood. He was able to moisten his tongue enough to cry out, "A sail! A sail!" But as the ship neared, they saw that it was a ghostly, skeletal hull of a ship, and that its crew included 2 figures, Death and Nightmare, life and death, who takes form of a pale woman with golden locks and red lips, and thick man's blood with cold. Death and Life in Death began to throw dice, and the woman won, whereupon she whistled 3 times, causing the sun to sink to the horizon, the stars to instantly emerge. As the moon rose, chased by a single star, the sailors dropped dead one by one, all except the mariner, whom each sailor cursed with his eye before dying. Alone on the ship, surrounded by 200 corpses, the mariner was surrounded by the slimy sea and the slimy creatures that crawled across its surface. He tried to pray, but was deterred by a wicked whisper that made his heart as dry as dust. For 7 days and 7 nights, the mariner endured the sight of the dead men, but he was unable to die. At last the moon rose, casting the great shadow of the ship across the waters. Where the ship's shadow touched but the waters, they burned red. The great water snakes moved through the silvery moonlight, glittering, blue, green, and black. The snakes coiled and swam and became beautiful in the mariner's eyes. He blessed the beautiful creatures in his heart. At that moment he found himself able to pray, and the corpse of the albatross fell from his neck, sinking like lead into the sea. Free of the curse of the albatross, the mariner was able to sleep, and as he did so, the rains came, drenching him. The moon broke through the clouds, and a host of spirits entered the dead men's bodies, which began to move about and perform their old sailors' tasks. The ship was propelled forward as the mariner joined in the work. At noon, a breeze rose up and propelled the ship back to the mariner's home. As they neared the bay, figures made of pure light stepped out of the corpses of the sailors, which fell to the deck. Soon he heard the sound of oars. The pilot's son, and the holy hermit were rowing out toward him. The hermit, a holy man who lived in the woods and loved to talk to mariners from strange lands, had encouraged the pilot and his son not to be afraid and to row out to the ship. But as they reached the mariner's ship, it sank in a sudden whirlpool, leaving the mariner afloat and the pilot's rowboat spinning in the wake. The mariner was loaded on the pilot's ship, and on land the mariner begged the hermit to shrive him, and the hermit bade the mariner tell his tale. Once it was told, the mariner was free from the agony of his guilt. However, the guilt returned over time and persisted until the mariner traveled to a new place and told his tale again. The moment he comes upon the man to whom he is destined to tell his tale, he knows it, and he has no choice but to relate the story then and there to his appointed audience. The wedding guest is one such person. The church doors burst open, and the wedding party streams outside. The mariner declares that the wedding guest, that he who loves all God's creatures leads a happier, better life. He then takes his leave. The wedding guest walks away from the party, stunned, and awakes the next morning a sadder and wiser man.